fascinating. I'm a doctor, not a mechanic.
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
Most illogical. Aye, sir.
Well, that was different. Yep, lousy, but different.
Places, please, and here we go.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, chicken, Borgs, and things. Episode 117 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jarman, and we're here to compare, contrast, and confer about our two favorite franchises. And what are those, Steve?
Bam! Muppets and Star Trek.
That's right.
We've been doing one-to-one reviews of the Muppet Show and Star Trek The Next Generation.
And tonight we're covering the Muppet Show with guest Chris Langham and Star Trek The Next Generation episode 1100101. You're welcome. But Steve, first, tell us about the guest on this episode, Chris Langham.
So you'll recognize, I hope, that Jarman has omitted very special guest star because Chris Langham casts a shadow over the episode, hence why it is not available on Disney+. So this came up a few weeks ago. Jarman and I were not sure what we were going to do about it, and so I did probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of research. Damn. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I'm saying that I probably know more about this than about 90% of people at this point.
I did like half of that also deep dive, but not as much as you did.
So I want to give a little bit of background on what led the guest into infamy and our decision on how we're going to handle this episode because of it.
And maybe who he was to begin with, I guess, too, for context.
Chris Langham was a actor, a light comedic actor who'd won some awards and done some bigger roles. And our UK listeners are probably, knew him growing up. Mm-hmm. But in the US, the FBI kicked off Operation Ore, which culminated in them raiding the servers of a website called Landslide, where people could enter credit card information in payment for all manner of terrible things, including child pornography. Supposedly, in preparation for a movie role in which Langham was set to play sort of a peeping Tom creep type character, he decided to, quote unquote, do some research and purchase 15 images or videos from the site. He didn't tell anyone he was doing this. No one asked him to do it, and no one had knowledge he had done it. Operation Ore was passed from the FBI to British authorities, who identified many prominent people, including judges, teachers, and even people like Chris Langham. The night after Operation Ore was announced to the public, Chris Langham called his local police station to complain about emails he was receiving that were taking him to pedophile websites. Many people think this was so that he would have some sort of plausible deniability. He was charged with 15 counts of making indecent images. And I want to make this clear because I had to look this up. He did not record or take any of the photos or videos. For whatever reason, it is just the fancy wording surrounding downloading and storing images and videos.
Interesting.
Simultaneously in all this, he was accused of sleeping with a woman who said that their relationship had begun when she was 14. She was 18 at the time it came up. He was found not guilty on all those charges, but that sort of furthered his troubles. In 2007, he was convicted. He was convicted to 10 months in prison and 10 years on the sexual offenders registry. He only served 6 months after an appeal. So after expert testimony, the judge in the case accepted that Langham was not a pedophile. They had psychologists and behavior people come in, and that the research for the movie defense was improbable, but not impossible. However, that is not what the case was about.
Right.
This is where I agree with the judge, and the reason we're going to handle the rest of the episode the way we are. By paying money for the images and videos, Langham encouraged and in fact funded the abuse and future abuse of children.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, from this point on, we're not going to be talking about him. We're not going to talk about anything he did in this episode, because the fact of what he did casts a shadow over one of my favorite things. And it makes me so mad that I have to record this.
Yeah.
As a fan of the Muppets, it makes me so mad that I have to record this. So this week's Muppet Show, even without him, has a few nice things, and let's talk about them. Backstage, there's a plot that one of the acts has a magnetic moose who catches metal objects, including accidentally stealing things from the audience. / it's kind of implied it's on purpose. Audience members angrily come backstage to retrieve belongings. They send the moose to the canteen. He wrecks the Swedish chef's kitchen as he drags like half of the kitchen through the backstage. On stage, Kermit introduces a guest star, who then introduces the opening number. Kermit and Robin are in a boat fishing at sea. They sing Friendship. It's a lovely song before hopping into the ocean, where they sing the second verse with 2 giant whales with fish swimming all around. Meanwhile, above, a band of pig whale hunters sing "We'll Meet Again." Kermit and Robin trick them away by pretending that the whale is an island, and they finish the song Friendship. This is one of those implied things. Presumably on stage comes a female Muppet and a moose that has magnetic antlers, which steals watches and change from the audience and then leaves the stage. We then get a red double-decker bus containing ethnically stereotypical depictions of different regions portrayed by dogs, all of which have equally problematic accents and sing about how they're all Londoners.
Another reason why if this episode was on Disney Plus, it would still have the warning in front of it.
It would have the label.
Yeah.
It would still have the label. We then find ourselves at the zoo where a patron learns about the gnus, and it's full of sort of clever wordplay and ends with a singing taxidermied head. Kermit thanks the guest, and that is what we call the Muppet Show.
That's right.
So, Jarman, of what we have decided to review, what were your thoughts on this week's episode?
So I think it's a huge shame that this episode is ruined because of the guest, because that whale number was really cool and interesting.
The whale number was spectacular. It was like stellar. It
just had so much going on, and there was I encourage folks to find that one on YouTube or something called Friendship, with Robin and Kermit and the whales and the ship and the special effects and everything. It's like, this is just a big set pieces. So that was really cool. So I was like, oh, that kind of saves, I'm glad I watched this one because of that, and the maybe it's because I'm a Londoner song, interesting set piece wise, but then, the other stuff,
I'm the boss.
Not so good.
Yeah, not so good.
And then, the gnus song, is it actually pronounced GNU or is it pronounced new? I thought it was always pronounced just new.
Well, the thing is that I don't know, but in the song, they sing letters that you wouldn't normally hear.
Right.
It's because he's like, I'm a GNU, don't you GNO?
Right.
So the whole thing is that in the song, it is called a GNU. I don't know what it's actually called.
Yeah, it's a very rare animal. But that was cute. And I liked the talking heads in the wall, which is kind of fun. Giving the guy nightmares. And but I will say, even without mentioning the bizarre host of the show, because that part was bizarre too, just what that host did. There wasn't much of a real backstage plot, and the moose
was the closest thing. And I wish they'd done more with it.
Yeah, like they didn't.
Really wish they would have done more with it.
The guest was like on a lot of the episodes, so like there wasn't a lot of time for a whole like backstage thing. Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of the usual like sketches, so like this is kind of in the bottom of the barrel to me.
Besides the one Muppet News flash, there was none really.
So you're not missing much for this episode, except I would say that friendship number.
Except that the whale number.
Yeah, that was really good.
Like, there are other musical numbers in the Muppets that I like more than this one, but I can admit that this might be the most impressive. This might be the pinnacle of the Muppet Show.
Oh, yeah.
With that whale number.
They got some funding, obviously. They're going for it. And we should mention that
the stuff for making the movies.
We should mention the original host of this episode was going to be Richard Pryor, and Richard Pryor canceled last minute. So they pulled this guy in because he was a writer on the show at the time. And so Richard Pryor was going to be the host. This would have been on Apple. I mean, this would have been on Disney at this point if this hadn't happened. So I blame Richard Pryor for all of this.
Right.
It could have been so different.
Damn yous, Richard Pryor. You were still great in the Muppet movie, and we love you.
Yeah. I love all of his Gene Wilder movies. They're fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so otherwise, it's a very weak episode, even without the host. But otherwise, that friendship number, though, made it worth it, I think.
It's a one shining moment, but you're right. It's not enough to float the whole episode.
Yeah, exactly.
That being said, out of my own principled stance on this, this will neither fall top 3 nor bottom 3 for me.
Yeah.
Because not only do we not get to give it a fair review because of the guest, but also I just don't want to talk about him ever again.
I agree. It's just going to be an outlier that we'll leave alone.
Yep, it'll be its own standalone thing.
But for completionist's sake, we did mention it.
We did do it. We reviewed what we could and what we felt good about.
That's right.
All right, music this week. Friendship by Cole Porter from the musical Dewberry Was a Lady.
Oh, God.
It was turned into a movie in the early 1940s, which featured fellow Muppet Show guest Ethel Merman. It was later made into a movie with Lucille Ball, who, of course, was instrumental in getting the second pilot of Star Trek, the original series, made.
That's true.
So this is also a Trek connection.
Hey.
Bam. We'll Meet Again from Vera Lynn. It actually became an anthem for English soldiers and their families in World War II due to its content about, this longing for return and this wish for a sunny day. Maybe it's because I'm a Londoner. Written by Hubert Gregg. While he was on leave, he took a 20-minute break, like a 20-minute leave or something on World War II, and wrote this song. And it ended up being a huge hit. After the war, Gregg became known as a director of Agatha Christie mystery stage plays. He became world famous for this. And in a book he wrote about his life later, he referred to Agatha Christie as a mean old bitch. Because she was alive at the time he was making her play.
I bet she's a mean old bitch.
The GNU by Flanders and Swan. This was recorded on the Parlophone record label and was produced by a young producer named George Martin. I think about 10 or 15 years later, Martin would sign a young group called the Beatles and produce many of their albums.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Off the GNU.
So I think we both agree, but I'll ask, what did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
Oh, the bus. Absolutely. No.
The bus. I love that bus.
The friendship number, of course.
It was so good. And between them being on the sea, them diving underwater, that was the most successful they've ever pulled off the underwater effect. And we've seen it a few times. And
they even did the voice effect where they sound like they're gurgling underwater while they're singing and stuff, which is really cool. So, yeah.
And then you add the pigs and singing the other song. And then the end where they're up there and they switch the blue screen to be like real ocean behind them. That was all just so good. It was so good.
It's such a good number. It should be a different episode.
Not good enough. Yeah, it deserves a better episode to go with it.
It does.
All right, Jarman. So what happened on this week's episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation?
I want to hear you say the name of the episode.
00111001.
Close. It's 11001001.
101110.
So after being delayed a week from the events of the last episode, Angel 1, which you can hear on our last episode of MuppeTrek, the Enterprise is headed to Starbase 74 for repairs and upgrades. And in a bit of continuity, they even mentioned they were on the way to get repairs in Angel 1. So it's kind of cool to connect in that way. They don't often do that. But they soon find out that 2 alien binars are going to help with the ship upgrades. And they are a binary species. They're highly connected to their planet's central computer. And they are non-binary in gender and always travel in pairs. So very interesting, strange, interesting alien race. And they even naturally speak in binary, and they're assisted by these little computers that are attached to their brains to kind of communicate through binary. And Riker doesn't quite trust them because they seem really skittish and weird while they're working on the ship, and they answer things really nervously. Meanwhile, Riker goes to check on their work in the holodeck, and they encourage him to start it up and try out the upgrades. So he creates a simulation of a 1960s jazz bar in New Orleans, like you do, where he can play his trombone with a jazz trio with an audience of this one lady that is made to his specifications. And they really hit it off, and he's amazed by how lifelike she is and perfectly suited to his every whim. And her name is Minuet. And soon Picard joins him in the holodeck and is taken in by her charms as well. And she even speaks French with him a little bit. And most of the main cast at this point, the rest of the main cast, has gone onto the starbase to get some R&R while the ship's being repaired. They have some nice downtime for a while. Meanwhile, Geordi and Data are in Data's room while he's working on some artwork to learn how to be more creative and see if, as an android, he can be spontaneous and create artwork. And Geordi's, watching him in a scientific fashion to keep track of what he's doing and to guide him along the way. And Wesley is on the bridge, and Wesley notices there's something wrong in engineering. So he calls Geordi and Data to go investigate, and they go and find the containment field in the warp core is degrading, and the ship's going to explode soon. So they evacuate everyone off the ship, but they can't find Picard and Riker. So they assume they just have already left and went to the starbase. But they have to send the ship away before it blows up to take the starbase with it. And meanwhile, back in the holodeck, Riker and Picard have no idea any of this has happened, but as Picard tries to leave to give Riker and Minuet some alone time because they're getting really flirty, Minuet doesn't want him to leave. So Riker and Picard become very suspicious. And when they try to leave the holodeck, they find that the red alert alarm is going off and the ship's been abandoned and is heading off to some unknown destination. So they turn around and they start to question Minuet. And apparently she was in on it, and the Binars programmed her to distract Riker while they stole the ship. And Picard coming in was just a happenstance coincidence, and she doesn't seem to know anything else. So Riker and Picard head out to take back the ship, and they set a self-destruct sequence of 5 minutes first, so that in case they can't take back the ship, potential enemies, the Binars, can't take it for themselves. But when they get to the bridge, the 4 Binars that were on the ship are dying. They slowly figure out that the Binars had to steal the ship because a star near their home planet had gone supernova and fried their central computer, which they're all connected to, so they're slowly dying over time. And the Binars had made a copy of the computer, which they planned to upload to the Enterprise and then download back into the central computer on their home planet. And with the help from Minuet, then they go back to Minuet and they ask her for more information, and they talk to Data back at the starbase to try to figure out what they should do. And they have to unlock this information that's on the hard drive already on the Enterprise so they can send it down to the central computer. So they download it back to the computer on the Binar planet. The Binars start to reawaken and they're alive. They've saved all the Binars. And they ask the Binars, why didn't they just ask for this help in the first place? And they explain that they couldn't risk Starfleet saying no. To which Riker says that makes sense because they only think in 0 and 1 scenarios, like yes and no and nothing in between. So they take the Binars that are on board back to the starbase. They can have a proper hearing for stealing the ship. And then that's the end of the episode. It's quite eventful. So Steve, what do you think of the episode?
All right. So some things I liked. I liked that it was leisure time. Like everyone got leisure time and everyone was doing something kind of different. Like I dug that.
Yeah.
Them enhancing the holodeck was a good mechanic. I feel like they've already enhanced the holodeck like 2 times.
Yeah.
How many more holodeck enhancements? And no wonder all these holograms become sentient if they keep fucking with it. I like that the hologram ended up being the note that the Binars left behind. I thought that was at least a decent payoff for otherwise sort of a weird element.
Yeah, that's true.
I liked that for a moment it looked like Riker and Picard were about to have a threesome with a hologram.
He even smiles at the camera. He's like, oh, okay.
And while it was cheesy as hell, I did like the parody working together thing that Picard and Riker did at the end, where they both turned and like had to, and they were synchronized for just a few moments. It did play a little bit goofy. Some things I struggled with. How the fuck would they know that they would catch Riker, to begin with? And it seemed too specific to also not catch Picard. Because even Picard was like, good. I might choose myself.
Yeah, it's like, how do they know like Riker was going to come by and check on their work at the holodeck? You mean, like, why was he there? Like, yeah.
And also, why wouldn't it be like, you get in the computer, make mine a blonde. And then suddenly there was a blonde lady there. Like, why would they both keep staying and flirting with the same fake woman?
Well, she spoke French. Like me, I'm not British. I'm French.
Yeah, because I love how, like, he's literally in a living hologram with textures and feeling and heat and cold. And he's amazed by the fact of, like, oh my God, she knew my name was French. Of all the things to be amazed by, Picard.
Yeah, our chat GPT knows we're French or not at this point already.
And this is a criticism of how it was written or shot. I'm not sure which. It was too obvious, far too early, that the Bynars were not just weird, but that they were up to something.
They were so suspicious acting.
So suspicious from the get-go that there was no question to the audience that they were doing something.
Right.
And I didn't like this. Just felt kind of like a repeat and a rewash. It's another time, for some reason, they let a guest engineer who is an alien go unsupervised to mess with the systems of their ship, and they end up in a weird location.
That's true.
I think we've seen literally that exact thing 2 other times so far.
Yeah, the Traveler guy.
Yeah, and I feel like there was one more at some point that was similar.
It's possible.
But it just feels like, come on. We got to get out of these plots where it's like, we just randomly let these aliens fuck around with some buttons.
I mean, both times they have someone.
Of course. We left the child to watch them. What do you think it's like?
Wesley, keep an eye on them. I'm going to go fuck off. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was, the pacing was good. I think the alien concept was really cool. And that kind of saves that a little bit for me, that they were so unique. That was neat. That was unique. Yeah, they always come in pairs because they're binary, and they're always with each other. And the way they speak through this computer device attached to their brain helps them communicate faster. And like, that was all kind of neat concepts. But you're right, kind of wasted on a kind of retreaded concept where they could have used these aliens somewhere else in a better way. And also I like like you said, little character moments of everyone doing their own thing and showing what they're interested in. When they have some downtime, but like no Troy again, and no Miss Piggy in this Muppets episode either. So like, I feel like Troy and Miss Piggy are connected. Like they're just missing in action for 2 episodes in a row. So maybe Miss Piggy comes back right when
Oz was really in this episode at all.
He did one voice I saw on some kind of trivia thing.
Was he Fozzie?
I don't know, but I saw that on
Did Fozzie even show up? Oh my God.
There wasn't a Fozzie either. Yeah. But
what a weird episode.
Yeah, I really liked all the smarmy. I love watching Riker flirt with anybody because he's so good at it. He's just kind of like, he fast talks like a 1940s like detective or something. It's really fun. So I actually like this more than the Traveler episode, even though that was very similar. I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. But I think I enjoyed this episode more than that one, just because of the uniqueness of the aliens and the kind of the more ensemble cool moments. It felt more. Yeah,
I don't think I liked that episode that much either. So this one's kind of on par.
Okay, that's fair. So yeah, this is like a good solid middle episode for me, because I think they're getting more comfortable in their acting too, in the characters at this point. It all felt a little bit more natural with the characters. I don't know. I'm starting to feel that now, because before everything's kind of stilted, and now it kind of feels natural. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, once again, the fact that they're all going to leisure time just further enforces the idea of off duty, and there's things outside of the bridge, and
they're full characters.
All these bigger concepts that aren't just one-off like original series episode shore leave.
This whole episode is shore leave.
Yeah. To a mirage planet with dragons and rabbits and shit.
God, that episode.
That was a weird one.
So some trivia for this episode. Jonathan Frakes, the guy who plays Riker, is actually able to play the trombone in real life, and has done so since the age of 9. However, the producers wanted a more professional sound, so they hired session musicians to overdub his playing, but no effort was made to match the overdub to the visual image. And the result, it often looks like the actor has no idea what he's doing, even though he does. And this would be repeated later on throughout the series, every time Riker plays, because they just didn't trust his sound enough. So they wanted musicians to overdub him. And he's like, I play trombone, guys. The computer voice, I thought it did stick out to me. There was a male computer voice for different parts of the episode mixed in with Majel Barrett playing the computer. And that voice was Michael Dorn, Worf, doing his regular voice, not his Worf voice. I didn't even recognize it. Jonathan Frakes also noted that this episode was to him one of the highlights of the first season. I could see why. He's very featured in this episode. But he said, a fabulous show. Those are the kinds of chances we took first season that when they worked great. It was a very chancy show and I loved it. Those characters, the Bynars, why haven't they returned? That was a very well-conceived idea. They should have them as a regular on the ship to fix the engines or whatever the hell they do.
Sure, just keep a pair on.
Yeah, just keep them around for whatever the hell they do. I don't know. The Bynars themselves were played by young women. Children were considered for the parts, but the production team thought that it would be too problematic because of the limited time they could work each day with the union rules and stuff, and the need to hire teachers to keep them on, so it'd be too expensive. And the women also played similar-looking aliens in The Cage, our original Star Trek episode, the pilot. All those people with the brains that moved and stuff, those were all played by women as well, and the voices were overdubbed by men. The episode was originally intended to be filmed and aired before The Big Goodbye, with the latter's holodeck malfunction being explained as having been caused by the Bynars modification. So that almost would have made more sense that the Bynars screwed with it here, and that's what caused The Big Goodbye to happen. But some kind of production schedule thing happened where they had to flip it, and so they came after each other, but that would have made more sense. So like you said, it's like, didn't they already have an upgrade with The Big Goodbye? But anyway, the guy who played Commander Orfil Quinteros, the guy in the starbase who was, put the Bynars there in the first place, the human guy, he was in Mud's Women as like the schlubby guy who was like also in the episode, who had like a wife, I think, and he wanted one of the robots. I think. Yeah. That was him in Mud's Women, and also he was in the Mark of Gideon, playing a guy with a mustache. You can find pictures online. He looked familiar, but he wasn't a big part in that one. So he was in 2 episodes of the original series, and now he's in this episode of Next Generation. So that's pretty cool. And Steve, what are our Trek Connection Muppet connections this time besides the one you already said?
Boy, do I got him. Besides the one I already said, Gene Dynarski, who I think you just talked about, who played Commander Orfil Quinteros. Right. He was on an episode of Kojak, which starred Telly Savalas, who did a cameo in the Muppet movie.
We need a button for Telly Savalas now because there's so many connections to that show.
I mean, Kojak, here's the thing. We're getting these shows that ran pretty close and have all these character of the week formats. Yep. So we're going to have so much overlap.
Not just the Love Boat anymore.
Katie Boyer, who played 01, she was in a movie called Decoding Annie Parker, which featured Rashida Jones, who played the TV executive in 2011's The Muppets with Jason Segel.
Hey.
And then Abdul Salam El Razak, who played the bass player. He was in a TV show called Madman of the People, which starred Dabney Coleman as an old school reporter with a new school boss. Dabney Coleman played Martin Preitz, or Murray Plotsky, the swindler investor guy in The Muppets Take Manhattan.
Oh.
Where his secretary was played by Gates McFadden.
Hey.
Oh my God.
That was a full circle connection.
That was maybe the most full and delicious connection I've ever put together.
That was a great full circle connection.
And you know what? I didn't have the Gates McFadden thing written down. I literally thought about it as I was forming the sentence.
I'm glad you remembered.
I literally had the moment of going, oh my God. And she plays his secretary.
Oh, and coincidentally, I just saw a post today. It's Gates McFadden's birthday today.
Hey, Gates McFadden. We should tag her in this and she'll have no idea why.
Anyways, which makes sense that you had this full circle connection because these are the same episode.
Basically the same episode. I mean, both feature 2 characters acting synchronously. Picard and Riker at the console, and Kermit and Robin when they dive out of the boat into the water.
Hey. Both episodes have someone coming into the main setting who weren't originally supposed to be there. The Bynars on Star Trek and the guest on the Muppet Show when it's supposed to be Richard Pryor.
Both feature a fact introduced earlier that helps later on. The Bynars are pairs, which helps inform Riker and Picard's choice later that they would need to work together. and the Englishman who learns what a gnus is and then later remembers what a gnus is.
Both episodes have someone being mistaken for something they are not. The Binars are both called men by Riker on Star Trek when they're really non-binary, and the GNU being called all sorts of things it is not on the Muppets. It's true.
That is true.
Oh, God. What's that noise?
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
All right. It's the part of the show where we transport one character from one episode to the other and vice versa. So what you got for us, Steve?
Well, this week, Trek to Muppets, I'm going to bring over Data and replace the Englishman in the GNU number. I just think he would find it deeply interesting guessing all of the different animals that the GNU could be and then declaring it, recalling it later. And it would just be delightful.
And also he'd deliver it in a similar way because that British man delivered it in a very stilted kind of android way as well.
That's right.
I'm going to have Riker come over to replace the host for the Muppets episode because then you'd have a What was that?
Then we could review it.
Exactly. And he'd be like all smarmy and he'd be the sexy trombone the whole episode. I mean, it'd be great.
He just has a trombone episode at the end, like Hal Linden with his clarinet.
Yeah.
But it would be dubbed over by a different trombone player.
He'd be all pissed about it.
Muppets and Trek, I'm going to bring over the whales and replace the Binars because it would be just as obvious that they were out of place and up to something.
Just filling up the entire bridge.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't need any help? No, we're fine.
Go.
Wesley, watch them.
I can't, sir. They're filling up the whole space. I can't breathe. Just watch them, Wesley. Shut up.
Shut up, Wesley.
So Muppets to Star Trek, I'm going to have 2 copies of the magnetic moose come over to replace the Binars. Because then they just walk from room to room, destroying all the sensitive equipment with the strong magnets.
Tricorders and shit.
And just all the sensitive materials that if they get magnetized, it's ruined, just destroying the whole ship.
That's right.
Oh, and that brings us what'd you go say?
So I like it.
Yeah, go good. That brings us to the end of episode 117 of the MuppeTrek Podcast.
Join us next time for the Muppet Show with special guest Wally Bogue.
And the Next Generation episode, Too Short a Season.
So from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.